Hi everyone! Welcome to this month's interview for Courage Box. I'm Sean, the creator of Courage Box, and this is Stephanie Danger. She's a local counselor. So we're going to be talking about March's theme, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay, so do you want to kind of talk about yourself first?
Yeah, I'm a local counselor and been practicing for almost 3 years and work in a variety of areas, including anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, self-worth, and chronic health conditions with children all the way up to adults. So pretty broad range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about CBT then. What is CBT?
Yeah, well, you said it at the beginning. CBT stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy.
Mm-hmm.
This is an evidence-based psychological treatment that kind of focuses on the way people think, that's the cognitive, and the way people act, that's the behavioral. The main premise of CBT is that the way we think about a situation impacts how we feel about a situation, both emotionally and physically, and those all come together to have an impact on how we behave. And so it's really important to know the thought of CBT is that two people can go into the same exact situation, but because we all have unique experiences, unique thought patterns, we ascribe different meaning to the situations we're in. We have different thoughts and reactions to those situations, and so CBT is really about figuring out how are you thinking and reacting in situations, and starting to look at that from the lens of is the way you're thinking about a situation, is it healthy, is it true, is it functional? And if it isn't, looking at how can you change or challenge that so that it is more your thoughts about a situation are more functional and healthy.
Right.
Because if we kind of go back to the idea of our thoughts impact our feelings, if we have negative, untrue, unhealthy, or distorted thoughts about a situation, that can really result in feelings that lend and reactions that lend themselves towards anxiety, depression, low self-esteem.
So who would find CBT especially helpful?
I think CBT it's very well researched treatment, and they found it to be helpful for individuals with anxiety, depression, chronic pain, disordered eating, addictions, as well as anger and low self-esteem. So a really broad range.
Yeah.
And the great thing about CBT is it's also very good for problem solving. So it's great, even if you don't experience anything from that list, and you just want to be more functional in your life, it's very helpful for problem solving and for looking at situations in a different way. And so I think it's good for anyone, but those issues I listed, it's particularly helpful.
So how can you practice CBT at home, and what are some of your tips?
Yeah, I think one of the first things is just being open to change, because CBT is all about challenging your unhealthy and untrue thought patterns or beliefs, or just adapting the way that you have learned to react to a situation or approach problem solving. So you do need to be open to that change, and even open to the idea that your thoughts may not be or true necessarily, or that your thoughts may be distorted, and that's a real perspective shift, because we only experience ourselves, and this is kind of stepping back and being objective. So that's part of it, is being objective about your thoughts, and you need to be open to change to do that. I think one of the big things is using the worksheets, and Sean, you've included just really wonderful resources, and that's a big part of it. There's a lot of structure, which I really enjoy.
I like that too. Worksheets are fun.
Yes. So using worksheets, and really digging into the structure, so that it becomes kind of internalized. So the more that you use that and practice the worksheets, the more you can just remember what step to do in your mind. And so if you're out and you can't write things down, you kind of know what to do.
Yeah, eventually you won't need the worksheets. Eventually it'll just happen automatically. And I'm living proof of that, by the way.
Me too.
Yeah, exactly. I've done a lot of CBT with past therapists and on my own, and I still do it on my own. If something's really bothering me, I will sit down and do a CBT sheet. And it really does, the more more you do it, the more automatic it comes, the more automatically you'll recognize distortions in your thoughts and, you know, the connections between your feelings and your behaviors and everything. So
the fact that it is automatic for you reflects practice.
Yes.
And like you said, and you know, you're practicing it, and that's so important with CBT. Do it every day, and do it for a significant amount of time. Like not every day, but keep doing it continually. It's actually the repetitive nature and the practice of CBT that helps you to shift those thinking patterns. And so it does take time, but that's a really key tip is keep doing it, keep practicing. And actually, I always suggest do it when you're feeling good as well. Sometimes clients come back and they're like, well, I didn't do my thought log. I didn't have a lot of distorted thoughts this week. And I, you know, I know it's harder to do if you don't necessarily have distorted thoughts, but even going back and looking at past situations or past times where you've had unhelpful thoughts, that can be really helpful just to start identifying those when you feel good. And then maybe the next week or a few weeks later, something like that will pop up. And so I always say, do it even when you feel you don't need to. One of the things you can do as well, if you need some extra support, doing the sheets with, you know, a trusted family member or like a friend, because sometimes that helps you to be a bit more objective and look at things from another perspective. If you find you're struggling with the sheets, that's a really good one, is, you know, who's someone that you trust and someone who you feel is quite, you know, wise or like, you know, has a good perspective on things. That can be very helpful. I think it's also important to not get discouraged, because the thought patterns and the beliefs, those deeper core beliefs those thought patterns are based on, have been formed over years of experience. And it's really unfair to expect yourself to be able to change those in a few weeks even.
Or in like one worksheet, it's not gonna change.
So just remember, you're changing things that have been there for a long time and that have become really, you know, routine and automatic. And so just knowing it's going to take practice. And there's also a lived experience kind of component as well, because when you change your thoughts and you change your feelings, you also change your behaviors. And it's actually by living through those situations, using new behaviors in those new situations, or in those situations, that you're going to start to shift your thoughts, and actually, more importantly, your beliefs about yourself, about the world, about your abilities. And I think that's kind of the key, is that it does take time, but it's shifting some really deep and meaningful things inside. So try not to focus on too much at once. Like just pick a few key, you know, thought patterns. Like you know, for example, if you tend to mind read lots, you know, that's an example of you tend to think about what others are thinking and kind of imagine negative things. Just focus on that. Just be mindful, okay, I'm not going to mind read in situations today, or when I do mind read, I'm going to take that back home and work through a sheet to challenge it. So, you know, I think just focusing on a few key areas at once helps it to be more manageable. So.
And you can use the goals sheets included to do that as well. Kind of pick a few different areas and then work towards them with your goals. Figure out like exactly how you're going to do it, and So what do you advise against doing with CBT?
I think one of the big things we just said is you know, don't quit after just a few days or few weeks. That's really key. I think it's also important to remember it's a lifestyle change. CBT is a lifestyle change. So it's just like anytime you decide to change your diet or exercise, you can't just do it for a few weeks and then expect those effects to last after those weeks. You really do have to make it a part of who you are and make it a part of your lifestyle and your thinking patterns. Just like you said, you know, you still use that. I use it every day. It's a big part of how I maintain my well-being with anxiety. And so it is a lifestyle change. So just knowing that, you know, you have to be consistent with it. And it certainly is more intense at the beginning. It does, it gets less.
It takes more time at the beginning. It's a lot more emotionally taxing as you're recognizing all of these distortions and everything. And it can be really frustrating, you know, when you're like, oh, this distortion again, and oh, this distortion again.
Yes.
And it keeps, you'll notice, like, at least I definitely noticed, the same thing has come up over and over and over again. And like you said, it takes a long time to unlearn those automatic thoughts.
You know, it's important not to compare yourself to others. You know, when that comes up, oh, this came up again, no one else struggles with this, or why do I have to challenge this?
Yeah.
But the truth is that many people have distorted thought patterns. It's really rare as a counselor that I've ever gone through a distorted thought pattern sheet and they haven't identified that they actually struggle with, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 or all of them.
Yeah.
And there's weeks where I go through it and I look through the sheet and I reflect, I think I've had each one of these this week.
Yeah.
So just knowing that, like, it's very common, and actually I think a lot well-being and people who maintain a sense of well-being in their life are often using these strategies themselves. So just, you know, or like maybe they more naturally, like, without necessarily knowing the strategy, they more naturally know, oh, that's mind reading, and they won't do it. And to also know that CBT ideally changes your behavior. So this is just knowing that this isn't just an internal change, it's actually going to be external as well. And, you know, an example of that would be, you know, related to social anxiety. If someone, you know, has a thought distortion of catastrophizing, or the other word, kind of forecasting, kind of thinking of all the bad things that could happen. So if they have been avoiding social situations because they're forecasting all these bad things that could happen, and then they start to challenge that, you know, the result in their behaviors, they may be more social and may go to more social things, and that doesn't happen just in one night. Oh, now I'm good, you know.
Like you do one thought distortion streak and you're like, now I can go to all the parties. Like, that's probably not gonna happen.
It's like, but you might get out to a coffee with your friend that week, or you might be like, I'm gonna go to the movie with my friends, and you know those little kind of steps, but just knowing that ideally it is gonna change your behavior over time, and then I think just knowing that CBT is not the same as positive thinking. You know, and if anyone's ever said, just like to someone who's depressed, like, just think positively, or, you know, to someone who's anxious, don't worry, be positive. You know, it's very different from CBT. CBT is about identifying cognitive distortions, and it's about changing your thoughts to be more realistic and practical and empowering, instead of just kind of blanket positive statements like, I will be amazing today all day and nothing will ever go wrong, or, you know, like, kind of imagining like the best outcomes with no problems at all. That's very different from CBT.
It's unrealistic.
And
it's unhelpful.
It is, because it sets you up for a sense of disappointment, and actually, you know, we are going to face challenges, we are going to face troubles, and CBT is helping you to be realistic about how can you prepare for that, and how can you problem solve that. So it's a lot more empowering because it actually empowers you to be able to overcome the challenges when they do come up.
Do you have any recommendations for additional readings, like books or websites or anything like that subscribers can check out if they want to learn more?
Oh, yeah. So one of my favorite websites for anxiety is Anxiety BC. And BC does stand for British Columbia. It's a Canadian website that is just chock full of worksheets and resources for children, teens, adults, and parents. So it is really good. It's evidence-based. It's primarily CBT, and it doesn't just focus on one type of anxiety. It actually breaks them down into generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, which isn't an anxiety disorder, but it is related. And so it's just fantastic. And they also have an app that they've developed called Mind Shift, so Mind Shift. And it's just kind of the best of the website on an app. And I love on there, they have relaxation exercises, which we aren't necessarily talking about this week, but it is an important part of well-being. And I love the relaxation exercises on there because they have like people's voices that you can listen to. instead of having to kind of track it or read something on your own. And they also have kind of different like tools that you can use for CBT, like CBT tools like thought challenging or thought recording. So it's a great app.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
A book I really like is The Anxiety and Phobia Workbook by Edmund Bourne, and it's on its 5th edition, actually 6th edition. This is the 5th one. Super popular, really great workbook, chock full of CBT exercises, but it's also very holistic in that it looks at a lot of different areas. So talks about the importance of sleep and nutrition and exercise and meditation and spirituality, things like assertiveness and core beliefs. So it really does go deep, but those are all great, great things. And a great chapter on panic as well. One of the best that I found and that I use all the time with clients. So this is a really, really great self-help resource. It is a bit thick, but each chapter is its own thing. So that's really nice because it's not like you have to read multiple chapters to kind of get benefit. It's its own contained chapter, and I really like that. So great resource. Another one that I really like is Mind Over Mood by Dennis Greenberg and Christine Podesky. Very popular self-help CBT workbook, and more focused on depression, but it also does address anxiety as well, and that's a great one too.
So this month we've included a worry box with a little notepad so you can write your worries down. First off, like, what is a worry box?
Yeah, so a worry box it's actually a CBT approach that's used to address excessive worry and anxiety. And the aim is to externalize your worry by putting it into a physically tangible object like a box.
So how can we practice having a worry time with the worry box?
Yeah, so when a worry crops up, jotting it on a piece of paper and putting it in the box. And, at this point you can kind of assess for yourself, do you want to challenge that? Or do you want to just put it in the box and say, like, here's the thing I'm worried about, putting it away in the box. And then the idea is that once you put that worry in the box, once you decide it's going in the box, it's going to stay there. And if that worry pops up again, you can kind of tell yourself, no, I've put it in the box. And so, and the great thing is that you can do that physically, but if you're not at home, you can also do it mentally as well. I do it on the way home from counseling. I give myself a little bit of worry time to kind of bring up, what are the things I'm worried about? What's bothering me? What were some hard things from that day? But by the time I'm getting, a few blocks away from my house, I'm imagining putting all those files into a filing cabinet, closing it, and locking it. And so the worry box is just kind of a physical representation of that. And it's just, a great resource. So like I said, write it down, decide if you want to assess it, but most of the time you're just going to put it in that box and say, now it's there. I've given myself a bit of time to think about it, to worry about it, but now it's in the box and it's going to stay there.
Yeah. How can subscribers return to those worries later, and should they?
Yeah. Well, again, you get to decide. I think one of the pieces of advice I give sometimes, like one of the approaches is, when you open your box up, like at the end of the week or the end of the month, take a look at it and see how many of those things are still relevant for you now, or how many of those things came true or actually impacted you negatively. And often it's very few. You're like, oh, this didn't matter. Yeah. And it's kind of a good thought exercise to then use as evidence later when you're worried about something, and you can ask yourself, like, am I going to worry about this in a week or a month? Like your sheets.
Yeah, there's a CBT sheet like that.
Yeah, the sheets in the box. You can be like, most of the time, no. Most of the time I'm not going to worry about these things. So that is a really good kind of exercise, is look at them, but more so to assess, like, is this actually still bothering me? If it is still bothering you, or you are still worried about it, that's a good indicator that you may want to use a worksheet for that worry or thought. So, this is coming up lots. Maybe I need to use a worksheet, or maybe this is actually something in my life I need to problem solve. Maybe it's an unhealthy relationship that's causing that worry or stress, or something in your job that needs to shift. So sometimes if a worry is coming up again and again, there is a reason for that. So We worry for a reason, but again, with the box, it's kind of more focused on excessive worry and worry that is actually more so based on unhelpful or distorted thought patterns. But there is times where, of course, you're going to have legitimate worry, and you may need to return to that and problem solve that.
So do you have any warnings with the worry box or any tips?
Yeah, one is, try not to use the worry box as an avoidance strategy. So, like I kind of said before, sometimes we need to problem solve, or sometimes it's an unhealthy thought pattern that we need to address. Now, worry box is great because if you feel overwhelmed at the time, or you don't have the time to really go through a worksheet or problem solve, it is good to say, this is going in my worry box. I will take it out at a time where I have the emotional energy or the time to work through this. And so it's good in that way. That isn't avoidance, right? That's kind of saying, Kate, that not right now, I'm going to return to it when I'm ready. But if you're constantly putting things in the worry box that are coming up again and again, and they aren't being resolved, or you're not doing worksheets or problem solving, that's kind of, something you do want to avoid. I think another thing is just like anything else, if it doesn't work for you, that's okay, and just try something else. Some people, a physical representation of a box is going to be what they need. For some people, a mental representation. For some people, that isn't going to work for them. Worry time just isn't going to be a good fit. But knowing, like anything else, you just kind of have to find what is going to work, and also know that try it more than once to see if it's going to work. Give it a good solid effort to kind of assess, is this helpful or not.
So we also included a couple little extra things. We included a stress ball that I get to make. I haven't made them yet, but I'm going to. Yeah, that's fun. And we also included some play foam. So do you want to comment on those at all?
Yeah, I love stress balls and play foam and fidgets. The key thing with particularly stress balls actually is when we're stressed and anxious, physically there's a tension, there's a clenching, and it's actually that tactile reminder to clench but release and relax. And so that's actually a great thing about a stress ball. And of course, just like anything else on its own, it's maybe not the most effective at like relaxing or reducing anxiety, but when combined with other things and as part of like a toolkit, it's really good.
So thanks, Stephanie, for joining us and sharing all your wonderful knowledge. I'm sure all of the subscribers are going to find it helpful. I've already found it helpful. So so next month's theme is going to be skip this if you want it to be a surprise. Some people want it to be a surprise.
Spoilers ahead.
Yeah. So next month's theme is going to be self-regulation and mindfulness. So we're going to have a different guest next time. Probably one of Steph's friends, actually. So, but you'll be back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So not the last you've seen of Steph, but okay. So thank you so much for watching, and good luck this month. I hope you find these strategies really helpful and this Nahara box helpful. So yeah.
Bye.
Bye.